Hi, my name's Kelli Hastings, and I'm an attorney in Orlando, Florida. And I want to talk to you today a little bit about red light camera violations. There's this thing called metadata, and that's really the embedded time codes and other information that's critical to really understanding exactly what's happening at the moment an alleged violation occurs. The state is supposed to provide, or the municipality that's bringing someone to claim for a ticket is supposed to provide all of the photographic and electronic video evidence that's being used against a driver or an owner of a vehicle that's accused of a violation of the statute. And case law is pretty clear that implicit in that request, that public records mandate that the city or the state provide the information, that implicit in that request is all of the electronic information behind the request, all of the metadata information. And the city is, at least locally, City of Orlando has not been providing that information. I'm sure there are other municipalities in the state that are not providing that information. And the reason it's important is because that information is what would allow someone who's accused of a violation to actually cross-check the still images with the video images to ascertain whether there's actually been a violation. And a lot of these violations are less than a second, 0.3 of a second, 0.2 of a second or less. So when you get down to these minute amount of time in a violation, it's really critical to understand what the metadata shows, what the electronic timestamp codes show, so that you can figure out whether an actual violation occurred or whether there may have been some kind of malfunction in the equipment that was used, which we've seen. We've seen malfunctions in the equipment. We've seen still image that suggests that in a certain violation, in a case that I'm handling, that the light was both red and yellow at the exact moment the alleged violation occurred. So that kind of information, which shows that maybe the equipment wasn't functioning right, makes it even more important to look at these embedded codes to figure out what actually happened at the moment of the violation.
What should the person who receives the ticket, what should he or she look for finding that metadata?
Well, I think the first thing to look at when you get your ticket in the mail, there's a couple still images that are provided, and they will have like a metadata bar up at the top. Look at the amount of time that you've been accused of violating the red light with. So if it's less than a second, then you're surely going to want to request the metadata. If the violation shows that your infraction was a few tenths of a second, then I would certainly want to request the metadata on the video image in that case, so that you can cross-reference the video and see if you actually did run the red light at the time interval that's being claimed.
What can the individual do, short of hiring a lawyer, to protect his or her rights?
So yeah, to protect your rights, one of the best things to do is to send a request, a public records request, to the municipality or city that's accusing you of a violation, and ask them for the embedded codes, for the metadata information that they're supposed to provide by law. And if they don't provide it, when you go to your hearing before the judge or hearing officer that hears your case, make sure to argue that the city or municipality failed to give you that information. And that may be enough to get your ticket thrown out right there. I can't imagine that the City of Orlando is completely isolated in the way these cases are handled. ATS really does have a stronghold in the US as far as maintaining these cameras. They're the private company that's really kind of running the show with red light cameras all over the US. And I imagine they handle them in a similar way in different municipalities. So if they're not providing the information in Orlando, they're probably not providing it in a lot of other places as well. And they're supposed to. They're supposed to provide that information. And it does seem a little fishy that they provide the metadata with respect to the still images and not with respect to the video images. It suggests to me that maybe there's some kind of discrepancy between the two based on maybe the type of cameras that are used or some other reason, but that maybe there's some concern that if the video metadata was provided, that it would be inconsistent with the still photos, which a lot of times, like I said, people are being accused of a violation that's a fraction of a second. So if the video doesn't corroborate the still image showing the violation that's a fraction of a second, then a lot of people would probably get out of these tickets. And a lot of times people are probably just paying the tickets rather than being bothered with the process of fighting them. the whole system seems to be a little bit flawed. I mean, it's run by private companies who make almost half of the income, so a lot of the revenue isn't going to the cities like it's sort of laid out to be. And it seems like it's a little bit, it's not the best monitored system. I mean, they're giving people tickets based on fractions of a second without providing the information that would allow one to cross-check whether that information is correct or not. And then the biggest thing for me was that it hasn't prevented accidents. Like, that's the whole thing that it's supposed to do, and yet accidents have actually gone up since the red light cameras were instituted, and there's been a higher incidence of rear-end collisions since they were instituted. So it's not creating a safe environment like it's supposed to, and the money isn't really being used in the best way. Most of it's going to private companies.